Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Brew City Lounge. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to what always and will always be a jam-packed episode. I am your host, Brandon. Please go ahead and follow me on Twitter at Wisco_Brandon. You can also follow the show on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram now as well. Also subscribe to that YouTube channel at Brew City Pod. Very excited for you guys to be tuning in. If you are on the live stream, good afternoon. I know it's 1:30. Majority of you guys are probably out at work or what have you. Thank you guys for tuning in. If you are on the live feed, I do greatly appreciate it. If you are in fact listening on your smart device, I hope you are doing fantastic. Thank you so much for giving my show a listen. It is always an absolute honor and privilege to be here to be talking about our favorite teams, because if you're listening to the podcast, I hope your favorite teams are the Bucks and the Brewers, and lots to talk about as always. Lots to break down. The Brewers win 2 big games last night in that doubleheader against Chicago after a frustrating weekend against the San Francisco Giants. We'll talk a little bit about that series. The series currently with the Cubs. The Brewers are back up to a 7-game lead in the NL Central, so that's awesome. That's the high water mark of the year, 22 games above 500 as they sit 68-46. We're going to talk a little bit about Christian Yelich. The struggles continue for the former league MVP. Is it something to be concerned about? Your patience level with a guy like Christian Yelich. Willy Adames, as we mentioned in the show prior, I'm going to keep mentioning it as we go on later into the season and get into late August and into September. Willy Adames, ladies and gentlemen, take the homer out of me, take everything about me that I love him more than more players in the major leagues. He's a realistic most valuable player candidate. Like it or love it, don't like it, whatever. He is a realistic candidate for the major league, National League MVP award. So we're going to talk a little bit about that, how he stacks up against guys like Fernando Tatis and Bryce Harper and so on and so forth. At 1:30, if you're listening to the show, it's 20 minutes from now, Mirin Fader, she wrote the book, Giannis, The Improbable Rise of a League MVP. She's going to join the show. We're going to talk to her for about 30-ish minutes. We're going to talk to her all about the book that she wrote. As you can see, it's right behind me. We're going to talk to her and get the insight of that book. So that will be fun to kind of look forward to. That's again in 20 minutes. Before we continue with the show, as always, the show has merchandise, ladies and gentlemen. Hop on over to our Facebook and Twitter pages. It's pinned at the top of the page. Click that link, shop for your favorite Brew City Lounge. If you're a big Brew City Lounge fan, hit that link, shop for your favorite apparel. And as always, Brew City is also partnered up with the folks over at Fanatics. That link is also posted up at the top of our social media pages. Click that link, shop for your favorite team apparels, whether it's the Bucks or the Brewers, Packers, whatever you have. They have literally have everything. But like I said, we are going to talk about this Milwaukee Brewers team. And look, they're in a really good spot right now. Milwaukee Brewers are in first place. A 7-game lead in the NL Central. If it continues to go this way into September, I don't know how much the Reds are going to push the Milwaukee Brewers as far as the National League Central goes. The Brewers' schedule is not as favorable as the Cincinnati Reds. I believe 13 out of the remaining 40-something games or so, the Cincinnati Reds are playing the Pittsburgh Pirates. But right now, the Milwaukee Brewers are playing really good baseball, and it's kind of striking because their best player, or at least so we thought. You could probably make the argument that Willy Adames is their best player right now, but Christian Yelich continues to struggle right now. In his last 19 at-bats, Christian Yelich, the former league MVP, ladies and gentlemen, 2018 MVP, 2019 runner-up MVP. The question is out there. If you guys are listening to the show, how much time are you willing to give Christian Yelich? Now, don't freak out. I'm not saying trade him. I'm not saying send him down. He doesn't have options. You can't do those things. You might bench him for a little bit. I was hoping any positive news out of his COVID stint that maybe a mental break would have been beneficial for a guy like Christian Yelich, but we continue to see the struggles. Last night, he just looked like completely lost at the plate, and he did have an RBI in that game, which was, I guess, encouraging off the pitcher's hand. I believe in the 4th inning, whatever that inning that was, or they scored a couple runs. But Christian Yelich, it just doesn't look like he has control at the plate. It doesn't look like he's comfortable at the plate. A ton of ground ball outs. As a Brewers fan, if you're listening to this show as a Brewers fan, I want you to ask yourself, and it's a realistic question: how much patience do you have with Christian Yelich? Now, you got really lucky, if you ask me, with the Willy Adames trade. Maybe not lucky, but you hit a home run, with the Willy Adames trade. Since May 22nd, the Brewers have the best record in the Major League Baseballs. As the season stands right now, they have the best road record in Major League Baseball. Now, that can be probably, credited to a lot of their starting pitching. The pitching, in my opinion, is obviously on par with the best in the Major League. You could say it's the best. Look, you're knocked down 2 starters. You bring in Aaron Ashby last night, and he does a phenomenal job until obviously the rain in Chicago. You guys know how I feel. If you're true to the show, I want every Major League Baseball team in the area, especially the Midwest area, to put a roof on it. It would have been nice to have these games up at AmFam Field. Wouldn't have any rainouts, but it is what it is. The question still remains, though. He is a former league MVP. In 2019, he was runner-up. If he doesn't have that freak accident with his knee, he probably wins back-to-back MVPs, to be honest with you. And he was runner-up. I think it was Cody Bellinger that won it that year after a strong finish to the season for Cody Bellinger. But the question remains, there's some serious concern with Christian Yelich, and I don't know what it is. Now, Brewer haters, Christian Yelich haters, Cubs fans, they'll say that he's been cheating, stealing signs, yada, yada, yada. I'm not breaking any news when I say most Major League Baseball players have done something to gain an advantage. Pitchers do it. What we saw with Spider Tack, it happens. You see a lot of times or pitchers in or batters in the batter's box in their peripheral vision. They'll checking signs by the catcher, and you'll see the catcher kind of peek up at the hitter and maybe change signs or call a timeout and run to the mound. So we're not breaking news here that Christian Yelich may or may not have been gaining an advantage from stealing signs. It still doesn't beg to differ that his numbers, look, 2020 and 2021 so far, these are the worst numbers in his career. There's no question about it. Between the last 2 years, last year and a half or so, his numbers have been horrible. Currently, Christian Yelich is batting 226, 6 home runs, and 29 RBIs, 230 plate appearances. Now, look, a lot of it has to do with arguably the back injury. We could argue that it probably hasn't helped him as far as, getting guys consistent at bats to be able to be in that rhythm, to be in that flow, and to be there every single day. So again, it's worrisome, but as a Brewers fan, you're sitting here this team is seriously still pretty good. I mean, 20 games over 500, or excuse me, 22. Christian Yelich really hasn't lost him many games. His wins above replacements just sits at 0.8. We can dig into the sabermetrics all we want. I don't think that you're going to find a whole lot there as far as other players. Look, Tyrone Taylor's, been really good. Jace Peterson, we saw, can play out in the outfield. Lorenzo Cain has been hurt. Colton Wong's been hurt. Willy Adames is the reason this team is where it's at. Just give credit where credit is due. The guy has come in from day one and since May 22nd and has turned around this team. I mean, a team that was kind of dead in the water. I don't want to say dead in the water. I guess that's probably a wrong term, but they were pretty down. I mean, there were a couple games under 500, no energy, no emotion. And Willy Adames came in and kind of changed that. Christian Yelich, I think if the Brewers are going to if the Brewers are going to get to the World Series, Christian Yelich is going to be the reason that happens. Now, I said at the trade deadline, I thought getting Eduardo Escobar was one of the best moves. It just kind of went under the radar because it happened prior to the actual trade deadline. And at that time, with that trade deadline, there was 10 trades within 5 minutes, and it kind of just went nuts. The Cubs obviously imploded, traded everybody that they've ever drafted. But I thought that Eduardo Escobar trade at that deadline was huge. Kind of went under the radar. Obviously, the Willy Adames trade. If Christian Yelich can get it together at the plate and provide consistency, provide good at-bats, if he's hitting the ball hard, he's, maybe lining out or flying out deep, getting the ball in play, it feels like he strikes out in 3 or 4 pitches and he's done. And he's swinging just completely out of the zone pitches. I don't know. The confidence obviously might be lacking. You think with a guy with a former MVP that the confidence probably is there, but it tends to go away. We're seeing it right now in LA with Cody Bellinger. He's coming off the bench. And Adam, who's over on Twitter, he brings up a good point. Give Yelich till the end of the season to get his groove back. You can always bring him off the bench. And that's a great point, Adam. Again, thank you for tuning in on YouTube, or excuse me, he's on Twitter. I follow the show on Twitter at Brew City Pod. Bringing him off the bench is something that the Brewers can do. We saw it against the Giants, and if you remember, I believe it was a Saturday night game. Frustrating series with the San Francisco Giants. Felt like a series where you probably should have swept them. You lose 2 out of 3, but you see them lose that series. But you see Yelich come off the bench in a key moment, and when he came off that bench in a key moment, the crowd at AmFam Field got to their feet. It was a key part of that game. You thought that a big hit here, swings the game into your direction, and Yelich strikes out on 4 pitches. So again, I don't know what you do with a guy, of his stature. Look, they're locked in with that contract for a long time. We never thought that we were going to be able to sign Christian Yelich. We obviously signed him. So he's here for the long haul. We were happy at that moment right before COVID hit. I think 2020 kind of screwed everybody up in a sense. It wasn't necessarily a year of the hitters. We saw more pitching dominate 2020 with the 60-game shortened season. So the question still remains, like, how much time are you guys really willing to give Christian Yelich? Now, me, I'm a Christian Yelich fanboy. I love Christian Yelich. Obviously, when the trade happened in January, none of us would have ever predicted that Christian Yelich was going to turn into the guy that he turned into for about a year and a half. Obviously, with the MVP in 2018, the NLCS, and then obviously 2019, he also won, he was runner-up to Cody Bellinger. Was it the injury to the knee? Is it the back injury? There's something going on with Christian Yelich. And look, it very well may be that his back may never, I don't want to say get better, but it might be that where he's at the point now where it can't get any worse, but it can't get any better. And we're kind of stuck in the middle. And the answer is to just play. I mean, realistically, that's where we could be. So I'm not willing to give up on Christian Yelich. I'm kind of with Adam. You kind of let him go to the end of the year, but you're going to be presented with a couple problems come playoff time. You look in baseball, 7-game series is, yes, kind of like basketball where we've seen you can lose a few and still win that series. Baseball's a little tricky though. It's a lot of momentum. It's a lot of who's hot. It's a lot of luck, as it is with any sport, really. Baseball's got to bounce the right way, and certain things got to happen in order. We saw it with the Washington Nationals in 2019 when they actually beat the Brewers in that wild card game. Everything kind of just went together for them at the right time. We kind of saw it with the Milwaukee Bucks this year. As you can see behind me on my board, still champs. That has not changed. So, question with Christian Yelich, how much time are you willing to give him? Are you willing to let him play throughout the year? We got people chiming in on Twitter, on Facebook, on YouTube. Remember to hit that subscribe button, follow the show on all social media platforms. We're now on Instagram. I'm still trying to figure out how to work the Instagram game. So we're still working on that as well. But how much time are you willing to give Christian Yelich? And it's a question that we're going to continue to ask ourselves, as we're going to continue to ask within the fan base, how much time we're willing to give Christian Yelich. If you got thoughts on it, you can drop them on here. You can drop them on Twitter. Find me at Wisco_Brandon. In about 10 minutes or so, I am going to be joined by Mirin Fader, who wrote the book about Giannis. We're going to talk to her. But before she does come on, we're going to move on from this Yelich topic. It's something that right now isn't affecting the Milwaukee Brewers. They sit at 22 games above 500. They sit 7 games ahead in the National League Central. It's the high watermark so far for these Milwaukee Brewers. Another game against Chicago, the Cubs tonight. If it gets played, I believe there's some weather possibly affecting it, as it did the first couple of days with this series. And the Cubs are just fun to kind of look at. I don't even recognize half that team anymore, maybe 3/4 of that team, as they completely are in sell mode and rebuild mode. And as Brewer fans, we've all been there, so we can talk a little bit, but not a whole lot. But moving on to the next thing, and we got about 5 minutes here before Mirin jumps on. I want to talk about Willie Adames. Now, I talked about it previous show with my buddy Francisco from the Walking Off pod. Is Willie Adames, and the question is going to get thrown back out there. So if you guys are on the live feed, feel free to jump in and call me crazy, laugh at me, whatever you want. Willie Adames is a realistic top 2, definitely top 3 MVP candidate. Now, is he going to win it? No. We all know the world in baseball loves Tatis, maybe some Harper. Willie Adames isn't that guy. Now, Willie Adames was playing in a larger market. Story probably changes a little bit. But as we know, Willie Adames is not going to get the coverage, the media attention that these other guys would. But solely speaking from what the guy does on the field, and now that's a discussion. He's right there with guys like Fernando Tatis. They're both batting just under 300. Now Tatis has a little bit more power numbers. He's at 31 home runs, and Willie Adames is only at 26. But for me, it's the OPS. Willie Adames almost at 900 OPS. He's batting 500 slugging percentage. Now again, all these guys, Tatis, Harper, they're all going to have really good numbers. I would say that it probably falls right now as Fernando Tatis as the favorite. I don't know where the shoulder injury is with Fernando Tatis. Now I could be just behind on the news. I have not heard anything. I believe from most recent that Fernando Tatis was still on the IL with the shoulder. I know he dislocated it. I think that was like his second or third time this year. So again, if you guys are listening to the show, you can let me know the latest on Fernando Tatis. But I think if the season continues to project the way that we're seeing project, Willie Adames again with a home run last night in Game 1, had a couple hits in Game 2, the best records in baseball since he's arrived to the Milwaukee Brewers on May 22nd. That carries a lot of weight. We talk about the most valuable player. Now, a lot of it gets kind of lost in who's the best, who's the most talented player. Now, Tatis, hands down, generational talent, amazing at what he does. But what does he do on that? If you take him off of that Padres team, where does that Padres team sit? They're still in the playoffs. They're still fighting for that division. That's a whole nother topic for that NL West division. It's just kind of crazy right now. But I think if you take Fernando Tatis, and we've seen it since he's been on the IL, they continue to win. They continue to be good. They have a really talented roster behind them. I guess the other candidate might be Bryce Harper. Where would the Phillies be? The Phillies have struggled all year. They're just starting to get things turned around. So I don't know if you can necessarily put Bryce Harper, maybe that top 2. If I'm looking at the National League right now, at the top 2 for most valuable player, Willie Adames and Fernando Tatis are the 2 players. Now, if Fernando Tatis does end up missing more time than the 10-day stint that he currently is on, same thing kind of with the National League Cy Young with DeGrom. If they're missing multiple times in multiple games and days, then obviously that's got to come into play. Adam's back on Twitter. He drops in a comment. Adames is a top 3 hands down. Will get some votes for the National League MVP. The question I have, Adam, how many votes? Where do you think he falls? Now, if Fernando Tatis comes back and continues his projection into where we think he has been all year, where he really has been all year, then yes, you're going to get, Tatis is going to win the MVP. But I'm agreeing with Todd, and Todd's over on YouTube. Hit that subscribe button on YouTube at Brew City Lounge. Todd drops in a comment. No player has meant more to their team's success than Adames. Kind of what I was saying earlier. Yes, Tatis is more talented. Obviously, he does a lot more on the field. Has more home runs, more RBIs, has a higher batting average. But what they mean to their teams and what Adames has meant since that May 22nd trade, they are the best team in baseball. Todd also drops in, unfortunately, a lot of what he brings to the team and the clubhouse doesn't show up to stats that jump off the page at you. And I'm stumbling on my words. Thank you, Todd. You're absolutely 100% accurate. Adames off the field, that clubhouse, you can see it. Guys get home runs, they throw up the claws. Or excuse me, not home runs, hits, walks, anything. The energy is just completely flipped. And Todd's right. You're not going to see it on his WAR stats, on his the Saber metrics, OPB, OPS plus. You're not going to see that pop up on there. And Todd's 100% right. And shout out to Todd. He's also one of the co-hosts over at Walking Off Pod. Shout out to them. They're phenomenal at what they do, and they continue to put out great work. So shout out to Todd. But we talk about with the MVP, what does it mean? Is it the best player? Is it the most talented player? Is it the best player on that team? What makes an MVP? And I think of what gets lost in the shuffle is that, it is about talent. The MVP should always be about talent, but it's also what you bring, again, off the field, in that clubhouse, just around the field. Look what happened to Luis Urias, for example, with that Willy Adames trade. We thought Luis Urias was pretty much done. We thought, well, they got the shortstop they've been looking for, and that's that, and that's a wrap. But he's completely flipped to become a really, really good player. So it's going to be interesting going forward. That what happens with the Milwaukee Brewers. They're projecting to be a top team in the National League. But like I mentioned previously to the show, and look, I was so excited for this show today because I'm going to bring on the special guest of this show, and she really needs no introduction. But bringing on to the guest of the show, brought to you by the folks over at One Call Technology. Give them a call at 888-585-8850 for all your cable and telecom needs. Mirin Fader, author of the Giannis, The Improbable Rise of an MVP. It is right behind me. Get your copy today wherever books are sold. You can also follow Mirin on Twitter at Mirin Fader. Mirin, word on the street is you're pretty busy these days, so I appreciate you coming on to the show. Appreciate you taking a little bit of time this morning to talk to us. How are you doing?
Oh, hi, Brandon. It's so great to meet you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm good. You're right. It's been like absolutely bonkers over the last couple of days, but I feel like since the Bucks won, life has just been a bit of a whirlwind. But yeah, so happy to be here and talk with you.
So I'm gonna be honest with you real quick. We got to start off the show and be honest. I have not finished the book yet, and there's a couple of reasons why. Number one, because I have 3 kids, and they're always
understandable.
They're always, but number two, and this is the honest truth. I, for some reason, cannot get through a chapter without tearing up. Like I can't. Like Giannis has been. I've wanted Giannis to succeed. He's my favorite player ever. I'm a Milwaukee Bucks fan, obviously. But what he means, the type of person he is, has made me want to root for him so much harder. And then there's a lot of things like. I thought I knew everything about Giannis, and there's a lot in your book. The first couple of chapters, I think I'm on chapter 5 now. The first couple of chapters, I remember sitting back like, I never knew that. Like it's crazy. Like, what were your thoughts? Like, right? How did this come together for you too? Like, that's the other question I have. Like, how did this start for you?
Yeah, I'm so glad to hear you say that. Thank you for the kind words because, that's literally the goal is like, I just felt like we didn't know much about him beyond the broad outline. And so, yeah, that was totally my hope. I actually did this from a story I did for Bleacher Report Mag, which is where I used to work. And I don't know, I went there to profile Alex, the youngest brother. And then the more I talked with Giannis and him, the more I was like, I feel like this profile can be a double profile. And I think it'll reveal new sides to Giannis that we don't know. And, I think like those of you who have loved him for so long, about how caring he is and charismatic and compelling. But for the broader national news, because the media so rarely covered the Bucks, people like didn't really know much. And so I think I was just like, I really think this guy would be a perfect book subject. He's interesting. He's great at basketball. His story is fascinating. So yeah, that's how it came together.
I got to ask you too, because you started writing the book. And newsflash for anybody that's listening, there was a pandemic as well, and currently, unfortunately, still happening. How did you do this during? I saw that you had over 200 interviews. Talk to me a little bit about the process of writing a book, speaking to people on the other side of the world, over Zoom, correct? I'm assuming over Zoom or FaceTime, whatever. Kind of explain the difficulties in what you did accomplish.
Oh my gosh, it was so hard. And another It was so hard. And another thing that made it even harder was like a lot of the interviews with the people in Greece were not only over Zoom or Viber or WhatsApp or whatever, all the platforms, but they were mediated by a translator. So it's like this awkward, like looking into a computer screen and like the time it takes for you to ask your question and they give your answer back and translate it. I mean, it was some areas just took like 5 hours, which is fine. I'm so grateful. But I think, the isolation was so hard and I had planned to go to Greece and it was such a bummer to cancel the trip. But fortunately, I just had to be really crafty and there was a lot of really nice people in Greece that helped me out and sent me videos and photos and just indulged my every stupid American question. And so, I was just trying to recreate the scenes of a place as if I was there from this apartment in Los Angeles. And every day I'd wake up at 5 a.m. and I would start interviewing people in Greece at 6. And yeah, I live alone, so the isolation was just weird. But so many people were losing their jobs, so I was just like, I'm so lucky that I have this. So I think that's what just helped me get through it.
Now, I don't think like first off, congratulations on the book.
Thank
If you
you.
guys are listening to the show, if you're a fan, you don't even need to be a fan of basketball, really. I mean, the life lessons in the book, I look at things just for the first couple of chapters. I've looked at things just completely different. I mean, when you talk about Giannis telling Alex that they can't have, you can't buy a PlayStation. I mean, it tugs at my heart because I'm obviously a father with kids, and looking at Charles and Veronica, and obviously Charles is in a better place right now. Looking at Veronica, what is something you took away from her story? Because raising those kids, again, immigrants in Greece, they were, obviously at a disadvantage right away. What's something you learned about their family based off of what you learned from her?
Yeah, I mean, I think, well, first of all, like, sometimes when people are writing about Giannis or just athletes that grow up in similar circumstances, I think there's just a tendency to be like trauma, 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 sad, 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 cry, cry, cry. And I think there's a real balance to strike between showing the awful realities and, the lighter, happier parts. And I think Veronica was really such an example of how to do that. So even though things were really tough, she consciously would be smiling, and after working a 14-hour day and like washing their socks so that they would have a clean pair the next day, just like learning little details like that about her, because she said she was really conscious of the way that children form memories and she wanted them to have a happy memory of childhood. And it's such a testament to her and how she raised them because they really do have fond memories. And I think that's also like the lesser told story of Giannis is like, yes, things were really tough, but he had a lot of happiness. He had a lot of joy. He had a very, very happy childhood in most respects. And the camaraderie between the brothers is so much more healthy and wonderful than so many kids I know in America that grew up with everything and don't have that type of bond.
Yeah, that's what I tried instilling in my own children is, can't always have candy at dinner, but be happy.
Really? Are you sure?
Be happy, try to be happy about what you do have. Now, speaking about family, now everybody that knows Giannis or has heard about Giannis, they know family means everything to him. Something that stuck out to me in your book was when the Bucks front office finally convinced John Hammond to take that trip to Greece. And in your book, and I'm getting goosebumps literally as I'm talking about it because I seriously love the book so much. When you see John Hammond and he goes to Greece and the gym is, run down. There's no rim on one of the backboards. There's plastic chairs that they run out of. And he goes to Greece and he's watching Giannis and he turns around and he sees Charles, Veronica, Alex, Thanasis, Kostas all there. And it kind of catches his attention about his family. And he was like, I want to learn about them. I want to know what they do. When we say family is important to Giannis, I think that's an understatement. Would you agree?
Right. Yeah, no, it really is. Like there's close and then there's their family close. And it was so miraculous for them to be there that day because usually the parents are out, selling in these, markets with illegal permits. And so they had to obviously take time off from work to go do that because it was just such a miraculous moment to be there. And I think with them, it's like when you grow up not having much, you don't think like, wow, you don't always, I should paraphrase, I should say, you don't always think, wow, this is so horrible. They really, they took refuge in each other. Like I think that their family in itself was refuge. You know, we're used
Hmm.
to talking about refuge like a place, like the basketball court is my refuge, the bookstore is my refuge, yours truly, or like, you know, somewhere is your refuge. But for them, like family was a place of refuge.
Hmm.
And, you know, they just didn't fight because they didn't share, like they didn't have anything individually. So everything they had was shared. So you know, it was really interesting learning about how when Giannis got ready to potentially play in Spain, he just broke down and cried
Hmm.
when he realized his family wouldn't be able to come with him. You know, and it just like never occurred to him that he would be doing something without them. That's just not in the cards.
I thought that part was interesting because Alex, not his brother, the agent,
Yeah,
was joking with him and kind of said, "Why do you
right.
want your mom with you? There's people and girls and clubs and Giannis, you could tell from a very young age that this guy was like, look, a part that really struck me was the part where he wouldn't go home, and you wrote it. It's early in the chapters. I think it's chapter 2, maybe. Um, and he was crying at a park bench because he would see his mom struggle and do everything she could. And Thanasis would rub his back and say, eventually, we'll make it, we'll survive. It's incredible at that young of an age to have the mindset. You hear a lot in your book of how mature he was for his age, even, with other NBA players and front office people going to visit him. It was taken away about how mature he was.
Yeah, I was really struck by the same thing. Like when I learned about how like the evictions that they faced, you know, Giannis was like 13, 14 years old, but he was like the leader of his younger brothers and how he would just have to tell them we're going, you know, and how almost adult you have to act in such a strange situation and not complain and not want things. Like he learned to suppress want for a really long time. And he's just always been older than he seemed. Like when he introduced one of his childhood friends I talked to his home, and excuse me, there's not much in there. And Giannis was like, one day I'm going to have a room full of books. I'm going to have a
Mhm.
television. Like there was just always a brightness about him. And it goes back to what you were just saying about maturity.
When you talk about Giannis and Veronica, the whole family, really, they're very, very private, very closed in. They've obviously have their reasons and rightfully so. Was it difficult for you to gain as much access into their personal lives, into their past, than maybe you anticipated, or did they open up, pretty quick to you?
I mean, I think it was difficult because like, for example, I hadn't known before I set out to do the book that they actually had no intention of coming to Greece. They went to Germany. Imagine if he was like the German freak. That just would be like so weird. And I think it would just be like it doesn't sound good. But but I think I was just really relieved to have done the story that this book is based out of because for example, like I interviewed the youngest brother Alex for like 4 hours in the basement, and we didn't even touch stuff about the upbringing or the dad's death until midway through. Like these are just questions you don't want to ask off the top because it's like imagine me interviewing you and just being like, tell me about the worst thing that ever happened to you. It'd be so crazy, and you'd be like, this lady is the worst, get her out. And so I I think it's the same, approaching them. Like when I sat down with the mom and, Veronica was just sitting very far to the side that day that I spent with them on the bench. And then 45 minutes in, she hands me an Altoid. And that was a moment of breaking through, I think. So they just are a private family. I think there's so much that I still would have liked to include that I didn't quite get. But I hope that I did it justice. I hope that there's enough in there. It was, I think, as you mentioned, like the pandemic and not being able to do in-person stuff after March was really, really tough. But that's why I really made sure to talk to as many people as I could, like over the phone.
We got some comments coming on YouTube and Twitter asking where they can buy it. Guys, ladies and gentlemen, if anywhere you get books, Barnes and Nobles, Amazon, I mean, you can speak on it a little bit more. Anywhere you really can buy a book, I think it's everywhere now.
Yeah, Barnes and Noble appears to have, the most copies available, but so do the indies. And I know Amazon also obviously has it. Bookshop is great. Bookshop.org, I believe it is. Book Depository. These are all great sites. And the audiobook. So there's been massive audio difficulties. So frustrating. It was supposed to come out yesterday via audiobook. It will be out today, audiobook wise. It's going to be on Audible later today. I believe they just put it up on Apple Books, the audio version. So I'm really, really sorry about that, guys. It'll be up as soon as possible.
Just a couple more questions here for you, and I know you got a hectic schedule as you
No
just
worries.
wrote the most anticipated book I know in Milwaukee. That's for sure. When you're and what a perfect time too. Like I didn't even bring it up to you. Like the Bucks just won a championship, and then all of a sudden, like you're just like you're putting the cherry on top. Like, oh, here's also a stories that you've never heard about Giannis. Enjoy.
I'm such a lucky human. This had nothing to do with personal skill or knowledge. This is just the universe being nice to me. Thank you, universe. Thank you, Bucks. I don't know.
Good things come to those who deserve it. I do want to ask you though, when you're interviewing people from whether it be in the Milwaukee area or the NBA world, obviously out in Greece, do you have to verify those people? Like, do you got to go and say, okay, you really knew Giannis, you grew up with him? How did you verify those sources?
Yeah, great question. This was something that I was like really, really, really cautious about because it's the first time in my life where like I couldn't really like Google like athlete childhood friends and just like find names. So, it really required getting to the inner circle of coaches and teammates and then asking them, okay, who else was close to him? And then when you get to those people, do you have a photo with Giannis growing up that you can show me? And then I would just rattle off a list of names. Did you hear of this guy? Did you hear of that guy? Like very deep cut questions that you can't fake. Like, did you know about this one guy, Emmanuel, whatever? Like, did you know about him? Oh yeah, I played with his brothers. That's like, okay, you legit were there.
Okay.
So it was really, that was scary to me because you're like, well, what if somebody's just like lying, But that's where responsible journalism comes from and asking those follow-up questions. So I think the more I wouldn't say difficult, but just talking with like Greek people that did not know Giannis and really making sure that they're not embellishing their stories. And when they are embellishing, calling it out. Like, for example, like you remember Spiros Velinatis, the man that discovered Giannis. He's very emphatic. I thought God was talking to me. It was a divine blah, blah. I'm like, okay, he was 13 years old playing tag. You deserve so much credit and I will give you your due in this book, but this is too much. And so as you said, I wrote in the book, like, I think I said something like he's a storyteller at heart. He likes to embellish. So it's just being honest.
Yeah.
And not putting a fairy tale in something that it's not,
So you had over 200 interviews. You had to talk to people around the world. You had to gain access into the NBA, front offices and talk to those individuals from start to finish. What was the time frame that it took you to finish this book?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So normally people get 2 years and more to do books, but they only gave me 1 year from March 2020. Wow. Yeah, literally I signed the deal mid-March 2020, right as the pandemic really took off. And then it was due March 1st, 2021. And the reason is because it had to come out this August because at the time that I signed the book deal, we had no idea if Giannis is going to stay in Milwaukee or not. And so we thought, okay, cool. Like the book will come out when he's making that epic decision of free agency. Like that'll be the peg. And then Giannis goes and like says he's going to stay by December of that year. And then he goes on to win the championship. And now I got people mad at me that I didn't include the title run in the last chapter. Like, I'm sorry. I had no idea you guys are going to pull off the unthinkable.
when you're watching the NBA finals and in the playoffs, and I don't know if you're a big NBA fan, but obviously you're paying attention to Giannis. Sure. When you're watching the finals, does it ever occur to you like, dang, I should have waited? Like, and I know if I'm not mistaken, the paperback will have a chapter with the finals, but is there ever any part of you that is like, dang, I should have just waited a couple extra months?
No, because serendipity worked in my favor. That's true. I think that there's never, again, by some cosmic miracle, not anything to do with me. I think, obviously I watch the playoffs religiously, but, during the playoffs, I think a lot of people, it was very, I don't know if you felt this way, but it was very strange to watch people not from Milwaukee or people that just like don't pay attention to the NBA fall in love with Giannis for the first time. Like it was almost like a repeat flashback to 2013 to 14 when people were like, wow, he's so adorable. He's so thoughtful. He's so charismatic, seems so genuine. This is like something you all have known for years, right?
Mhm.
And it was just fascinating for me to watch this like first time introduction to him, which is absurd. How are you first being introduced to a two-time NBA MVP? But again, we could talk about Milwaukee media disparities at another point. But I think because there has never been more hunger to learn more about who he is as a person. For example, when he did that quote about ego and humility, it goes viral, and suddenly everyone wants to know about what he thinks and how he gets so wise. Who is he like? So, even though it did not have the title run in this edition, I just think that hunger to know more about who he is as a person will hopefully be satisfied by this. And so I think the timing just ended up being ironically really awesome.
Your words, what you just said about Giannis and Milwaukee, they resonate with all of us so much because we've been following. I make a joke with my kids, and they know I'm partially joking. And I say I love Giannis as much as I love you guys, and I'll tell them that. And
That's real.
Mirin, they know it's real. And I've never met him, but I love him. We kind of watched this. He was a kid, he was drafted.
Yes.
He didn't know America. There's stories about him walking on the streets in January with a shirt and jeans, and he tried a smoothie for the first time. He tried a corn dog for the first time. He's yesterday at the Wisconsin State Fair, just walking around as a normal person, and Milwaukee fans, Wisconsin fans, Bucks fans all over the world. We knew this guy, and I tweeted it out, and I said, take aside your basketball fandom, whether you like him or not. If you don't like who he is as a person, you have a you problem, because there is nothing to dislike about him. And this will be the final question for you. What is the one thing that maybe you didn't know that you learned while writing this book that sticks with you?
I did not know how slow the Greek government was to get his papers. Because at the time I remember it being like Giannis just got his citizenship and then he went to the NBA and the Bucks drafted him. Yay, rags to riches, fairy tale. I had no idea like the process behind the scenes and how much red tape there was and how really awful the Greek government treated him and how they really only did this at the last second because Giannis was about to be a star. Like I had no idea. I had no idea that the Spanish coach who I spoke to who almost signed Giannis, well, he did sign Giannis, but Giannis ended up getting bought out to go to the Bucks. He was about to go to the Spanish government for papers, and that Giannis's group went to the Nigerian embassy. Like there was all this stuff happening behind the scenes that we had no idea. And again, serendipity, like if the Greek government did not grant him papers, Giannis wouldn't have been drafted by the Bucks. It's one thing that changes everything. And his whole life is, I know it's corny, but that's literally why I called it improbable, because there's like 1,000 improbable things that happen for him to get to where he is. It's like truly insane.
It absolutely, it really is. Everything kind of fell into the right place for him. He loves Milwaukee. He knows we love him. His family is growing, and hopefully they're here for a long time. I did say that was the last question, but I got one more because I want to know if you got another book coming up. Do you have anything you're working on, in the near future?
Well, thanks for asking. Maybe you and your listeners can help me out. I've been searching for a title. I mean, like a subject. My brain is broken. A subject, and I really want to do a second book, and I want to turn in the proposal by later this year. So I'm trying to figure out like what to do. I definitely think I want basketball. Okay. I think what I'm wrestling with is like current player or retired player, because like most sports books are on retired players minus Marcus Thompson's KD and Golden. But I think most people like to do the retired guys because they've lived a full life pretty much. But this book has given me such fresh perspective on like, well, maybe it is advantageous to write about somebody in their prime. Like, I think that's really cool instead of waiting to look back on something and maybe somebody's memory is different than when they're going through it right now. So yeah, I'm trying to brainstorm. So Let me know if you got some ideas.
I'm biased. I want more Giannis books.
Yeah, right. Maybe a part 2 in 10 years.
I know that's kind of difficult because you've covered pretty much everything that you could cover. But the book is so good so far. I'm working my way through it. Again, I seriously, I have to stop sometimes. I have to walk away and kind of dry my face because I love the book. You did such a phenomenal job with it. Congratulations. Once again, it's such a great job. And if you guys are out there listening, you don't need to be a fan of Giannis or maybe basketball. It's a story that will stick to you. If I'm not mistaken, Disney is making a movie in the future. So, something to kind of look forward to. Mirin, thank you so much for your time today. Congratulations. I hope nothing but the best for you. And if you get out there, buy this book, go to the indies, go to Barnes and Nobles, go on Amazon, get you a copy, and you will not regret it. Thank you so much for coming on today.
Oh, thank you for having me. Thank you for just the amazing kind words and questions. This was so great to finally meet. Thank you again.
And good luck. Try to take a break. I know you're in high demand. Try to take a break a little bit.
I'm going to take a nap later on you. Appreciate it.
Congratulations again. Have a good day.
Thank you. Bye.
That is Mirin Fader. She drops off, guys. I'm telling you right now, it's one of the best books that I've read. Not that I'm out there reading a whole lot, but it is just such a phenomenal book and a phenomenal story. And for those that know Giannis, that are a fan of Giannis, you guys out there know that that is my favorite player ever. And I, truly love him. But there's stuff in that book that I didn't even know happened or something that he may have gone through. But again, check out that book. You can follow her on Twitter at Mirin Fader. That, ladies and gentlemen, will do it for today's show. Thank you guys for tuning in. Mirin Fader, thank you so much for jumping onto the show. It was so awesome to get to talk to her. If you guys missed any part of that interview, remember, do not forget to subscribe wherever you may get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, Google. You can also follow the show wherever you have social media handles. We're now on Instagram, maybe getting talked into a TikTok, but I am not 100% on board with that. On Twitter, on Facebook, at Brew City Pod. You can also hit that subscribe button on YouTube. Our next show will be next Wednesday. Keep in mind, with basketball in the rearview mirror, I'm kind of focusing on one show per week, and we're going to kind of talk a little bit about more so about this Milwaukee Brewers run. No guests confirmed for next week, but stay tuned on Twitter, on Facebook. Don't forget to hit that follow button, and we'll get you guys caught up to who's going to be on the show next week. But that'll do it for today. I hope you guys are out there do well. If you're in the Milwaukee, Wisconsin, southeastern Wisconsin area, even down in the Chicagoland, there is some severe weather incoming again. So I hope you guys all stay safe as we finish with every show. Go Bucks, go Brewers, playing the Cubs tonight, hopefully pending weather. Stay safe, Milwaukee, and I will talk to you guys very soon. See you.